Let's skip the pleasantries and destroy your financial worldview in the first 10 seconds of this video. Most of you watching this are being systematically made a sucker by 24-year-old real estate moguls on TikTok. These guys bought a duplex condo aos pedazos with their parents' money and now want to push a garbage $997 course on how to become a rental tycoon. They've brainwashed you into thinking that buying brick and mortar is the only sacred path to wealth, and that putting your money into the stock market is for losers who love watching their cash melt to inflation. They swear that cash flow is king, and that having a tangible asset is always better than numbers on a screen. It's a beautiful little bedtime story. It's also a total mathematical lie. Today, we are throwing real estate and stocks into a 20-year gladiator pit. And I don't give a damn about your feelings, your hype, or what your broke uncle said at Thanksgiving. We are using the actual US tax code, the real-world maintenance history that nobody has the guts to post on Instagram, and the pure physics of compounding. We are tracking two financial clones, Jake, the smart aleck who buys a house to rent out, and Marcus, represented by me, Gerald, the smart guy who buys index funds. One of them forgot to count the hours of his life he was going to waste, and the other forgot to count how many zeros he was going to stack. By the time we run the real math over 2 decades, the gap is going to make your stomach drop. So sit down, shut up, and close that Zillow tab for 5 minutes. Let's do the real math. To keep this fight completely fair, we are using baseline US economic averages. Both of us start at the exact same level of corporate mediocrity. We both have $50,000 rotting in a high-yield savings account. We both make $55,000 a year, grinding at a soul-crushing corporate day job. We live in the same mid-tier American city, and we pay the exact same taxes. The only difference here is the size of our ego and our execution. Jake wants status. He wants the ego massage of sitting at a sports bar on a Friday night, leaning over to his buddies, and dropping that pathetic line, "Yeah." I'm actually reviewing the numbers on my rental property right now. Sounds sexy, right? It makes his brain think he's the next big shot developer. So, Jake takes his $50,000 and drops it as a 20% down payment on a modest $250,000 suburban single-family home. He locks himself into a 30-year mortgage at a 7% fixed interest rate because, congratulations, the era of free money is dead and it's not coming back. His monthly principal and interest payment to the bank comes out to exactly $1,330. Then, Jake finds a tenant who agrees to pay $1,800 a month in rent. On paper, Jake's primitive brain does some pre-K subtraction. 1,800 minus 1,330 equals $470 a month in pure profit. He multiplies that by 12 and thinks he just unlocked a magical passive annual raise of $5,640. He feels like the Wolf of Wall Street. On day one, Jake has a house with cracked drywall, a tenant, and a great story to brag about at dinner parties. Meanwhile, we have me, Gerald. I have zero patience for talking to strangers or unclogging a tenant's toilet on a weekend. I take the exact same $50,000, log into my brokerage account, and dump the whole thing into a low-cost index fund that tracks the entire stock market. No leverage, no phone calls, no keys to hand over. To make the humiliation complete, I set up an automatic recurring transfer of $300 a month straight from my paycheck into that fund, log out, and go to play Xbox. When my coworkers ask me what I'm investing in, I mumble, index funds? I guess. Everyone nods with boredom and immediately changes the subject to talk about crypto or some volatile options play that's going to blow up their account by next week. Nobody gives a crap about what I do. On day one, I have a confirmation email and an account that looks like a gray Excel spreadsheet. It's not even close in terms of how it feels. Jake feels like a real estate baron. I feel like I just paid my electric bill. But guess what? The US economy doesn't care about your pride, and your bank account gives zero shits about your feelings. For the first 2 years, Jake is riding high. The rent checks hit his account on the first of the month like clockwork. He drives past his property on Sunday, looks out the window, and thinks, I own that piece of America. When tax season rolls around, his CPA pulls off those legal tax miracles with mortgage interest deductions and paper depreciation, saving him a few grand. He watches his equity grow with every payment his tenant makes, and he sees comparable homes in the neighborhood tick up on Zillow. Everything looks beautiful, tangible, and genius. I, on the other hand, I am a financial vegetable. I open my brokerage app once a quarter. Year 1, my $50,000 grew to about $55,000. Year 2, it drops to $53,000 because some suit at the Federal Reserve sneezed during a press conference, and then it bounces back to $61,000. It's incredibly boring. No key in my pocket, no tenant texting me, no bricks to point at from my car window, just a number blinking on a digital screen. Jake's friends are constantly asking him about the property. My friends don't ask me anything, because my financial life is about as exciting as watching paint dry. Jake thinks he's winning the race by 10 miles, but this is where the status signaling circus ends and the real world kicks the door down. Let's stop with the mental gymnastics of napkin math and run the actual loaded numbers through year 3. Jake sits down at his desk and decides to calculate his net returns. Over 3 years, he has collected $64,800 in gross rent. He paid $47,880 in mortgage payments. His barroom math tells him he has $16,920 left over. Sounds amazing, right? Wrong. Welcome to adulthood, Jake. Let's start running over the numbers your favorite influencer conveniently hid from you. To start, property taxes on that little gem cost $3,000 a year. That's $9,000 gone in 3 years. Landlord insurance took another $1,500 a year minus $4,500. Now let's get to the fun part. Things break. In year 2, the water heater exploded in the middle of the night, and the plumber charged a brutal $1,200 emergency fee. In year 3, a heavy storm ripped a hole in the roof, costing another $2,800 to patch before mold ruined the entire ceiling. To top off his success, at the end of year 3, the tenant decided to move out. The house sat vacant for exactly 1 month. The bank doesn't care if the house is empty, Jake. He had to pay that $1,330 mortgage payment straight out of his own day job salary, plus shell out another $600 for a professional cleaning crew and a listing service to find another runner to move in. And let's talk about self-management. Jake thought he was being slick by saving money and doing it all himself. What does that actually mean? It means he spent his lunch breaks arguing with contractors. It means he lost 3 consecutive sunny Saturdays doing showings for tire kicker tenants who ghosted him. It means waking up at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday with his phone buzzing because the upstairs toilet is leaking through the kitchen ceiling. When you subtract property taxes, insurance, emergency maintenance, vacancy, and turnover costs, Jake's actual, real-world, cold hard cash net flow over 3 full years wasn't $16,920. It was somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 total. That is a pathetic cash-on-cash return of less than 2% a year on the money he pulled out of his pocket. And that is giving him $0 value for the dozens of hours of personal labor he injected into managing that headache. He didn't buy an investment. He bought a highly volatile side hustle that pays less than minimum wage and robs him of his sleep. Meanwhile, I am still vegetating on my boring spreadsheet. I put my $50,000 up front and kept my $300 a month automated contributions going, accumulating an extra $10,800. With the market compounding at its historical average of 10% a year, my account at year 3 is sitting at $76,000. How many hours did I lose arguing with contractors? 0. How many toilets did I unclog? 0. How close did I come to having a panic attack? 0. My money works for me, not the other way around. But the real estate fanboys are already foaming at the mouth. But Gerald, what about leverage? You idiot, you forgot that the house appreciates! Calm down, varsity team, let's look at it. Jake's house appreciated at a standard 3.5% a year and is now worth $277,000. Because he used the bank's money to control a larger asset, his equity, the difference between what the house is worth and what he owes, has jumped to about $60,000. This is real, and it's the only reason the housing market survives. You use other people's money to multiply your gains. But leverage is a loaded gun pointed directly at your foot, and it comes with an entourage of 4 silent wealth killers that bleed your cash flow before you ever smell a profit. Let's spell it out so you don't screw it up. Number 1. The vacancy trap. The average US rental sits empty about 1 month a year. That instantly kills your income and doubles your expenses overnight. Number 2. Maintenance drag. Houses rot and degrade if you don't care for them. Budget 1% to 2% of the house's total value every year just to keep it from turning into a slum. That's up to $5,000 a year gone on screws, shingles, and pipes. Number 3, the capital expenditure bomb. Roofs last 20 years, HVAC systems last 15. These expenses are a mathematical certainty, and they come in heavy hits of $5,000 to $15,000. If you don't have a reserve fund set aside for this, you are not an investor, you are just a gambler running on pure luck. Number 4, the nightmare tenant. The guy who stops paying rent and uses every single tenant protection loophole in the local court system to live for free for 6 months, while you spend a fortune on legal fees trying to get an eviction notice. When he finally leaves, he's gonna punch holes in your drywall and rip out the copper pipes out of spite. A single event like that wipes out 3 years of profit. No clown on TikTok shows you that during their little transition videos, but reality always collects its debt. Let's fast forward to year 5. Jake now has deep bags under his eyes and already hates his third tenant with every fiber of his being. Over the past 5 years, he had to replace the entire roof for a staggering $8,500, paid $1,400 to clear a main sewer line backup, and swallowed another month of a vacant house. He managed to bump the rent over time to $1,950, but his property taxes and insurance premiums spiked in the exact same proportion. His actual cash-on-cash return is pathetically hovering at 4%. Is it safe? Sure, but it's a far cry from the 20% lie he tells to impress strangers at neighborhood barbecues. I am still in the exact same static position. Hasn't read a lease, hasn't signed a paper, hasn't taken a phone call, left my $300 monthly deposits on autopilot. By year 7, my portfolio has quietly crossed the $140,000 mark. He didn't have to time the market, he didn't have to read the news, and he didn't have to do anything except sit still. The snowball has finally picked up speed. The compounding interest on top of the interest he already earned is now generating more raw wealth per year than his actual day job. Let's look at the scoreboard at year 10. On one side, Jake's real estate. With average appreciation, his house is now worth $340,000. His remaining mortgage balance is down to $166,000. Jake's net equity is sitting at $174,000. But do not forget, to keep that structure from collapsing, Jake had to inject between $25,000 and $35,000 of his own out-of-pocket cash over the decade for repairs and tax hikes. On the other side, my stocks. Maintaining my contributions and my 10% average, my account is sitting at $172,000. I pulled a total of $86,000 out of my pocket over those 10 years. The rest is pure compounding magic. I spent exactly 0 weekends cleaning gutters or arguing with a handyman. At year 10, they are virtually tied in net worth. Jake might be a hair ahead on paper if his specific zip code was hot, but look at the massive asymmetric risk this idiot took. Jake took on a massive debt liability in his own name, sacrificed hundreds of hours of his finite life, and put every single cent of his financial survival into a single street address. If the city decides to open a landfill on the next block or the largest employer in town goes bankrupt, Jake's net worth turns into smoke. I diversified my cash across thousands of the largest corporations on the planet. If one goes under, the system swallows it and keeps moving up. I sleep like a baby. Now, let's go to the final showdown, year 20. This is where the influencer theories collide with the brick wall of reality and shatter into dust. After 2 decades of putting up with this humiliation, Jake's rental house is worth $480,000, and his mortgage is almost paid off. His equity is $430,000. Except over 20 years of swapping tenants, repainting, rewiring, replacing the HVAC twice, and doing a full cosmetic remodel so the house doesn't look like a horror movie set from the 1980s, his actual net cash flow profit that stayed in his pocket was only about $60,000. His total financial win over this 20-year journey was roughly $490,000. Let's look at my account. I maintained my boring $300 a month contribution into my total market index fund for 2 decades. I pulled $122,000 out of my pocket over my entire life. With that 10% interest running wild, my account exploded to approximately $440,000. No debt, no lawsuits, no plumbers charging emergency fees on a holiday weekend. In the end, we both land in the exact same ballpark of net worth, between $430,000 and $490,000 each. But the way we got there is an absolute insult to Jake's intelligence. Jake killed himself working to build his wealth. I simply sat on my ass and waited. Jake lived through 2 decades of active management, stress, zero liquidity, and concentrated risk. I watched a chart go up and down on a screen, but kept my money available within 2 business days and my total freedom intact. And here is the knockout punch that no real estate investor can ever seem to digest: scalability. If I had just stopped being a cheapskate, cut back on my lifestyle creep, and bumped my monthly index fund contributions by a measly $200, bringing it to a total of $500 a month, my 2 0-year portfolio wouldn't stop at $440,000. It would have skyrocketed to nearly $580,000. In the stock market, to scale your gains, you just change 1 digit on your brokerage app. The robot handles the rest while you keep scratching your stomach. In real estate, if Jake wants to double his gains, he can't just click a button. He has to go hunt for a second house, sign for a second monumental mortgage, scrape together another down payment, deal with a second set of volatile tenants, and completely double the amount of gray hair on his head. Look, if I only beat up on real estate, I would be just as dishonest as the scam artists I critique. Let's talk about the cold truth. The stock market has a psychological risk that will melt a beginner's brain. Volatility is a nightmare. In 2008, the market plunged nearly 37%. In March of 2020, it tanked 34% in a matter of weeks. If I log into my app and see my $150,000 account suddenly evaporate down to $95,000 in 30 days, my stomach turns to ice. Most of you do not have the gut to hold through that. The average retail investor panics, sells everything at the absolute bottom, locks in historical losses, and then cries on Twitter saying the stock market is a rigged casino. A physical property, because it's heavy and takes months to sell, acts like a straitjacket that stops an idiot from making a dumb mistake on impulse. Furthermore, index funds do not give you immediate cash to spend. The average dividend yield is a modest 1.5% to 2%. If you have $150,000 invested, that gives you $200 a month. That doesn't even cover your grocery bill. Real estate wins, but only in highly specific, calculated scenarios. First, if you hunt down a market where the monthly rent pays at least 1% of the total purchase price, then the math checks out fast. Second, if you stop acting like an amateur and set up a legitimate business structure, hiring professionals to handle the day-to-day and properly budgeting for capital expenditure like an adult. Third, if you use strategic house hacking, which means buying a multifamily property, living in one small unit, and letting the tenants in the other doors cover your entire housing cost, the stock market can't put a roof over your head. And fourth, if you master the tax code and use a 1031 exchange, selling an appreciated property and rolling 100% of the profits straight into a larger one without paying a single dime in capital gains tax, that is a monstrous legal tax shield that a traditional stock investor cannot replicate outside of restrictive retirement accounts. Real estate isn't a garbage investment. It's just a deeply misunderstood, over-romanticized asset used by digital grifters to clip a commission check. Jake and Marcus both made 20-year decisions based on illusions. Jake thought bricks were guaranteed money. Marcus thought the market would work for him without requiring any emotional discipline. Neither of them opened a spreadsheet to calculate the actual cost in dollars, in lost hours of life, in mental stress, and in the risk of absolute ruin. The ultimate financial trap isn't real estate, and it isn't stocks. The real trap is making choices that will shape the next 2 decades of your life based on a 30-second podcast clip, a flashy YouTube thumbnail, or whatever garbage your broke uncle spouted to sound smart at the Thanksgiving table. If you want to know what happens when you master both tools and use real estate leverage alongside the aggressive compounding speed of stocks at the exact same time, that is a completely different, high-level mathematical conversation. And that math will blow up everything you think you know about accumulating wealth. But for right now, the next time some smartass tries to tell you with absolute certainty that real estate always beats stocks, or stocks are the only way to freedom, do yourself a favor and throw one single question right in their face. Did you actually include all your expenses and your hours of labor in that damn equation? Because the answer that puts every single penny and every single minute on the tip of the pencil is the only answer that should matter to your wallet. Go ahead and smash the subscribe button so the algorithm stops recommending guru videos and you can stop being a financial institution's favorite little target. Or don't subscribe and keep buying over-leveraged properties with bad plumbing. I don't care. I'm not your dad. See you next time.